Hello, welcome to the Timeless Podcast, presented by the Timeless Hearing Network of audiology and hearing care professionals. We're on a mission to convince you that your best moments of your life lie ahead of you, not behind. That your spark, though wavering, can be reignited, your energy restored, and the fullness of both your love and life can be recaptured or possibly redefined. While our focus is on diagnosing and treating conditions of the ear, we believe in treating the patient beyond their audiogram in hopes of better understanding not just the patient's needs, but their motivation towards achieving a better quality of life, their support system at home, and their beliefs around treatment and self-determination. Hearing care sits at the nexus of communication, healthcare, technology, and of course, healthy aging. Hearing healthcare is related to cognition, relational and emotional health, confident and effective gross motor movement, and of course, independence and quality of life. In fact, untreated hearing loss in midlife can lead to irreversible health declines later on. Our goal is to pre-educate patients prior to treatment, as well as to drive more interest in treatment and referrals from physicians and healthcare providers and influencers throughout the region. Today, we will be speaking with Thena Lindhorst, Executive Director of Love Living at Home. Love Living at Home is a member-driven organization that enables older adults age 50 plus to live vibrantly while aging in place in the homes and neighborhoods that they love. Love Living at Home is committed to being a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization. Thena, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, Cliff.
Absolutely. And in full disclosure, we've got a couple areas of alignment. I think, first and foremost, through our audiology practices and your agency, we have a lot of overlap in the populations that we serve. We also have some proximity alignment. We have shared space inside of the same professional building with our Cayuga Heights location. And then, of course, recently we had the honor of sponsoring an unbelievable event that you had hosted at the Museum of Earth in Trumansburg. It was a really beautiful event, and even as much as I'd known through a couple discussions I'd had with you, what I was able to understand, not just about the mission and the resources that Love Living at Home brings to bear, but so many great voices from not just folks who participate in the programs, take advantage of the resources that are there for them, but even some of the folks who are actually delivering those services. So it was really, really a special evening, and credit to you and your team for one, an unbelievable agency, and two, a very nice event.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It was a beautiful evening for everyone involved, and we were kind of blown away by what our volunteers shared with attendees there. So,
yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So a general question to start, by the time you meet, would you call them clients or community members or...
Members.
Members. Okay. So by the time you meet your members and they qualify for services, they're into their 50s, possibly 60s or older. But you still are engaged with them and possibly providing some of these access to these services for a decade, two, maybe even more. What are some of the challenges that they have that they come seeking support with that continue to increase in complexity as they age?
So I would say typically our new member inquiries are people that are kind of at a place in their lives where they're just starting to find that they're seeing shifts. So, whether that's mobility limitations or physical vision, hearing loss, of course, some early memory loss, things like that they've lived a long life without having challenges in those areas. So they're finding that they can use a little bit of support, but they want to, keep their autonomy and live in the houses and neighborhoods that they love. A big thing that we see. A big thing that we also see is social isolation. So members, either they're new to the area or they don't have a big social support network. So they're really looking to, connect with people that are in similar situations.
Yeah, and we see so much of that in the work that we do, and I get the sense that not only are folks really committed to the independence, staying in their homes, but also to the region, right? I mean, many of your members, I'm sure, have extended family that live in other states or other regions, of the state. And while it might be easy and maybe even sometimes expected that they might retreat to the comfort of, a mother-in-law's apartment or whatever, those things might be called, on the back of a home, or a guest residence above the garage out back or something like that. They're really committed to Tompkins County. They're committed to, the area where they built this professional network. They've spent, their career or this significant portion of their life, and they're not really willing to leave just yet. Which I think says a lot about sort of the interconnectivity and the stickiness of that marketplace as well. So I love to talk about vulnerability. I think it is somewhat of a superpower, to tell you the truth. If we have hopes of having anyone understand us, communicating our needs effectively is really important. And that starts with this, awareness and, ability to become vulnerable in front of someone else. I have to imagine that for your members first putting in this request for support, there has to be some consternation, some resistance, some, self-discovery, the journey that they go on where, they're kind of used to covering all their bases on their own. I mean, the folks that I met at the event recently, these are dynamic individuals. These are movers and shakers. I mean, these are folks who, probably, haven't had to rely on other people for many things, and now they've grown to a point where they need to ask for help. Is there a sense of vulnerability or just the emotional state that someone might be in when they first reach out and say, I never thought I'd gonna have to ask for this type of help, but here I am, and what can you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we hear all the time is, I'm not ready yet. That just seems to be a phrase that is kind of recurring in many different areas. So I would say a lot of times with referrals, the majority of our new members are there because friends of theirs are members and kind of, recruited them and told them that we do offer more than just volunteer services.
Mm-hmm.
So we recently did a member satisfaction survey, and we found that 75% of our members actually joined for the social events, so events and programming. And, we thought it would be much more of a split with volunteer services and programming. We also find that some of our members see Love Living at Home as sort of an insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
So even if, they don't need a volunteer to come and assist them right now, that could change next week. And, they have a community there that will help and assist them whenever they need. So I would say, the I'm not ready yet is definitely something that we hear a lot. And when they join, then they kind of say, oh, I'm really glad I did this.
Yeah. I think about my own mother, and, she's, getting into her mid 70s, and I can remember, I must have been in my teens, where she would say things like, guys, when it's time, I don't want to be a burden, please, help me transition into a home somewhere. I don't want any of you to think that you've got to take me in and take care of me. And, it seemed very selfless for her to say that and to not want to be a bother. And her and her husband have this farmstead, I guess more of a homestead, in the Adirondacks. And it takes a lot of work. It's a wood heated home. It's a, quite large plot of land that needs to be mowed and shoveled and everything you need to do to take care of your home. And, they're both advancing in age, and there are times where it appears to me that, they might be overwhelmed or overmatched by the chore list. And I've started to try to open at least a little bit of a dialogue to say, we're not talking about tomorrow. We're not even talking about next week or next year maybe, but maybe, a plan of some sort to see what, the next transition is, whether it is that home that you'd mentioned, or it is, moving closer to one of us, myself or my other siblings. And she's more apt to shoot it right down, and just say, well, wait a second, I don't know who you're talking to, but I'm not quite ready yet. And I get the sense that, even in my mid 40s now, I've got an awareness of my limitations compared to where I was when I was younger. But a dogged determination to not really either admit them or succumb to them. So I have to imagine that spirit exists inside of all of us at each stage when we're kind of, witnessing the changes that life just brings to our door, whether we like it or not, which is really, really interesting. One of the things that I absolutely love about your agency as well is I see like a duality. I mean, there's a double set of benefits here, right? So one of the people who spoke was a handyman, and he himself was retired. I think he was an engineer by trade, and was able to become a volunteer for Love Living at Home, and was doing everything from, changing out light bulbs in stairwells that were tough to reach to, doing some significant repairs around people's homes. And I could tell just from the way that he was describing these things that, one, he liked doing it, right? He liked working with his hands. He's a fixer, a puzzle solver to a degree. But he knew what a difference these, somewhat innocuous tasks and some more complex were having for the members of the organization. And I think he found a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction and pride in that. And, to have a platform like yours that's not only delivering those volunteer services to the people who could benefit from them, but giving someone an opportunity to give back, that just seems like you're connecting, needs to the needy, or some more elegant way of saying it. Was that by design, or is that just something that has evolved?
Yeah, so there is what's called the Village Movement. It's a national movement. So there are organizations similar to Love Living at Home throughout the country. And the idea is really based on a neighbor helping neighbor approach. So, we have roughly 200 members, and we have about 100 volunteers. Of those 100 volunteers, about 70 of them are also members. So, we have people that can't drive, and they request services for transportation, but they do administrative work, volunteering from home, or they've joined committees that meet via Zoom. We have, a membership committee, a program committee. There's just so many different ways to get involved, so that, whatever their strengths and skills that they choose to share are, there's a way for them to be, as busy or as uninvolved as they would like.
Yeah. And I have to imagine that, it feels much more like a barter system than charity, accepting a charitable gift or a charitable action from someone, which, at times we all need and benefit from. But again, to be able to give back in some meaningful way, it probably makes it, a little more palatable to become reliant on some of these things, which I'm sure, in a general sense, and not thinking of any specific, member in particular, but in a general sense, you may see someone's needs evolve, probably escalate their needs over time, and maybe there might come a point where a discussion needs to be had about having reached the limits of what they can receive from living at home? And, what does that type of conversation look like? Are those conversations that you would have as the executive director, or do you have, more of a committee approach, or do you refer out to, more extensive service providers? How does that really happen?
Yeah. So, because you can't really fit what we do in a box. The way that we kind of phrase things is that we offer volunteer services that are things you would ask a neighbor to do. So, you're not going to ask your neighbor to come and, let's say, cook you lunch every day, but you might ask them to help you take the recycling out if it's too heavy, or if you're dealing with an injury or had a recent surgery. We have had to have, or we often provide referrals. So we have kind of an unofficial motto that's one call does it all, meaning that you can call us, and if we cannot provide the service for you, we will refer you to someone that can. We do also offer, if they don't feel comfortable making that call or connection themselves, we can reach out to other providers or professionals on their behalf.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to imagine it's a very malleable set of solutions, that kind of needs to adapt, because I would assume that every member's situation is as unique as a fingerprint, as unique as they are, right? Their core
Absolutely.
competencies, even their ability to participate in a way that's meaningful, how and when they're willing to ask for help, those sort of things, which is really neat. So there's some magic formula here that I sense it, but I don't know if I could put my finger on it. I don't know if it's the resources, if it's the network, if it's just this village approach of just connecting neighbor to neighbor in a time where we seem to have become more and more isolated as a society, more self-involved than ever before. If it's the personalities of the individuals who are involved. I don't know if it's, all parts and the sum becoming greater of, than adding those parts together, but it's something. I mean, do you spend much time trying to deconstruct or understand, what is it about this that seems to make it so well loved and so special?
So I think that, it is a kind of a combination of things that makes this really successful. But I think the biggest driving factor is just the social connection behind services. So, if we have a volunteer going to a member's house to, let's say, change a light bulb, like you said earlier, they're not, coming in, changing the light bulb and leaving. They're going to engage in conversation, typically, even start a friendship or some kind of a relationship. So we see a lot of things that start out as just a volunteer helping someone out, or people connecting through a committee, and then they become, close friends that hang out or get lunch every week and form relationships in that way.
Yeah, I could imagine that, if I were doing handyman jobs for, on a volunteer basis, which don't call me because I'm probably not going to be able to fix much. But I would imagine that I'd show up, and even if I wanted to kind of get in and out, that I'm sure I'd be offered a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and, if not a sandwich, and then, should I, be so inclined, I'd be kind of led through the photos that were on the mantelpiece or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, it really does seem like there's this openness there. And it's so important too, because, I think mental health, emotional distress, I mean, these are extremely common conditions inside of an aged population like this. And there's a number of factors that combine there. chronic illness. If you're not feeling your best, you're going to be irritable. And then if you're alone, you're going to be even more irritable. Decreased functional abilities, don't necessarily come to us with excitement. It's usually a lot of disappointment in ourselves if our bodies or our senses are failing us. Reduced mobility, chronic pain, financial issues. I think the longer that people live these days, the more frequent it is that they outlive or outpace the savings that they've put aside for themselves. And even if they had planned in a manner that they thought might have been appropriate, inflationary forces and keep prices raising on just about everything. And, suddenly the calculus changes and you don't have as much as you wanted to. And you start to create a new paradigm of available resources for yourself, usually more restrictive. Accepting help can be difficult. Seeing the stress on the faces of people who might be trying to help you but are not equipped for it. So it's one thing to have a volunteer who knows that their whole afternoon is going to be helping members. It's another thing if it's a family member who's kind of just been thrust into the role of primary caregiver with no nursing training, no, elder care training. And that can be, they've got their own worries too, so that can be really stressful. And then because of the lack of mobility, decreased functional abilities, they're not nearly as physically active as they used to be. And that has, a downstream impact of depression. So with so many things stacked against someone, it really creates what I would imagine is an insurmountable, formula for depression. And then if folks are on some type of, financial budget, they're probably just taking the maybe the medications, supplementation, nutrition that is really available for them and their most basic needs. So aside from just delivering some of these volunteer services, which seem like I'm happy to do it, I'm happy to help, you're happy to have me help, we've created this friendship. How many times are the interactions a little bit more terse or rigid because the member that you've shown up to support, is kind of in this state of, depression and loneliness. And then what can you do? Is there sort of a site evaluation that your volunteers do and say, hey, I was just over to see, Mary and gosh, I think she might need a little bit more than what I was able to provide for her. And then how do they escalate that? What does that look like, that conversation?
Yeah, so our volunteers do go through a training sort of specific to the area of volunteering that they do. So, transportation, our drivers have kind of a background screening where we need to get license and information like that if they're transporting members. But we also make sure that volunteers are trained to let us know when, something doesn't seem quite right. And then we can do a staff check-in call and just, kind of assess what their needs are, maybe find something that they would enjoy doing and invite them to, our walking group that meets every Monday. If it seems like they kind of need to get out and about and be around other people, maybe get a little exercise. We usually can find some way to sort of engage them in one of our programs, committees, or events. And there are people that really just don't want to engage. They're not in a place to do that. So we just kind of, frequently check in on them and see if things have changed in their life and if they're ready to get more involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to imagine that it can sometimes be the most fulfilling work that you could imagine doing, and at other times be a little bit heartbreaking. I know that in hearing care, we're part of the stewardship of assisting, supporting, treating people in the later chapters of their journey of life. And while we meet some patients in their 40s and start treating them, and it's a 25, 30-year journey together, we meet very many patients in their 60s and 70s, treat them into their, past the age of 100. But we'll see through their scheduled appointment regimen that, the passage of time affects us all differently. And for some folks, there's visible deterioration of mental faculties, visible deterioration of mobility, their verbal capabilities. We'll see someone in September and they might be walking with a cane, and then we see them in April and they're bound to a chair. And it's something that confronts not just us and the patients and their families, but it's something that we try to be as sensitive as we possibly can be, as empathetic as we possibly can be. And I think our mission is that even though these things are happening, can we, through the treatment of the hearing loss, specifically in our sector, maintain or increase that level of dignity and capabilities, or at least slow that decline as much as we possibly can. And if we can, well, then that's really good work to have done. So there is like a constant reframing for us, but we do bear witness to, the toll that time and nature play on the human condition. And that can be something that takes getting used to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, a lot of that is just finding the enjoyment and finding the laughter in situations by, being in a community with people that have, are going through something similar. So, the feeling that you are not alone in this.
Yeah. Yeah. And even some of the numbers that I've found in doing some research for our discussion, were that while, depression is a common condition for folks who are aging, it should by no means be considered normal part of aging, right? So we shouldn't just accept that it's going to happen. That there's some agency that each of us has over it, but that as we lose dependence and sort of move from maybe independent living at home to maybe being hospitalized even for extended periods of time, to then be institutionalized, whether that's in assisted living, or even further into maybe memory care or something like that. Depression first doubles from independent living to hospitalization, then it increases, the incidence increases by another 50% beyond that. So it does appear that with the higher level of need and resources, and the lower level of agency and dependence, that has a real impact. So the great work that Love Living at Home is doing by keeping people at home, and engaged in these social moments and activities is really helping to slow or stem some of the tide of the dis-ease that comes with aging. So again, it's really great work that you're doing. How long have you yourself been doing this work, and how did you come to work for Love Living at Home?
1 year tomorrow.
All right.
So I started December 6th of 2023.
Yeah.
And I guess my background comes from more marketing and nonprofit management. And I had a daughter who you saw earlier in June of 2023. And she she was born with a very rare genetic condition called Coffin-Cyrus syndrome that causes developmental and physical delays. So we have a whole team of specialists. She is thriving. I will say she's doing amazing. But we're kind of looking at things from sort of the opposite lens that some of our members are experiencing. So, right from the beginning, we are working with early intervention and all these different specialists. We see audiology already.
Yeah.
So a lot of our members are kind of at the opposite side of the spectrum, where they're just starting to figure out that they need to connect with specialists and professionals. So I think the birth of my daughter made me just much more passionate about figuring out what services are out there in Tompkins County, particularly for people with disabilities. And, the flexibility behind love living at home. I love living at home too.
Yeah.
So I'm able to be, more flexible for appointments and things with my daughter than in a more traditional, I guess, in-person role.
It's amazing. And she's your only child so far?
Yes.
We've just got one as well. And it is amazing what it awakens inside of you when you become a parent and take on that responsibility. And I know there are physiological changes. I mean, there are certain
really bad have gone down between
rebalancing of hormones that don't happen, and this happens for both mom and dad. It doesn't happen unless you go through that process of having a child. So it's kind of like you become a more complete version of a human, right? Once this happens, but it does really start to put into perspective maybe your purpose, how you spend your time, your approach towards work, maybe. So it's fantastic that through both of these things, of course, your daughter's birth and then finding living at home, you've really been able to find alignment in this idea of necessary resources for populations that need it. So that's fantastic. I wouldn't have guessed that you'd only been at this for a year.
Thank you.
Your passion for it, and really the response that I saw many members and volunteers have to you, specifically, I would have, you could have told me you'd been doing this for 10 years and I would have believed it based on the strength of those relationships. So it seems that you've really landed just where you needed to, and that they're benefiting from your leadership there. So is Love Living at Home structured like many NPOs where, you're the executive director, kind of in charge of, some of the day-to-day, keeping all the plates spinning in the air, but there's a board of directors that really addresses maybe long-term policies, maybe resource management on a higher level. What's it like to work with your board, and what are some things that they do that you're really impressed by?
Mm-hmm. So I would say this board is very different than any other board that I've worked with in the past in a really great way. The majority of our board members are retired and are, on the board because they want to get involved and help out. So they put in the hours. Of course, we do have some members on our board that are still working. Even they are just so passionate about Love Living at Home that I think that, they typically put in more hours than maybe other board members on different boards. But I think there's something kind of contagious about the work that we do and wanting to put in the time, because we can immediately see the difference that it makes. The other interesting thing about our board is that it is the majority of our board are also members. So we are a member-run organization, meaning that our board is the majority of our board is members, and then all of our committees are made up of mostly members and then some professionals in the community as well. But we are sort of from the ground up. So the members are the ones that are creating the programming or examining services and seeing, what works and what doesn't. So we're pretty unique in that way.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. And again, that village approach, I think, just shines through in everything. Obviously, these committee assignments and even board member positions are opportunities to engage socially and to work in a collaboration with other people. That's kind of this thread narrative too, is to keep people involved and engaged and, keep their minds and wheels turning on doing good work. So it's almost like standing the program up in and of itself is delivering a service to those members who are helping to stand it up, right? It's this flywheel effect, which is really, really cool. The other piece that I have to imagine is that it being member run, the board being populated mostly with members, the volunteer base being many members, and you mentioned recruitment earlier. It must take some of the stigma away from, a service providing agency for folks to participate with it in any way. It takes some of the stigma away of, this is either that folks, have to be considered with some level of either disability or inability in order to participate, that they take advantage of these, services because of poor financial choices or, being, below the poverty line or something like that, something that might cause people to feel like, maybe I'm not deserving of this. Maybe I shouldn't participate in. Maybe there's someone else who's more in need of this than I am, or that it's in some way just outside of what they ought to be, taking part in. So it seems like it's inviting and welcoming in that regard. Do you find that to be something that does have to happen, where some of your members are educating someone who might not know enough about Love Living at Home, the types of volunteer services, the other resources, and re-educating someone in a meaningful way?
Yeah, so I definitely think that sometimes there is a bit of a stigma before requesting services. So we sometimes have to encourage members, you are welcome to request a service. That's part of what we do and, why they're there. So I think a good way of going about that is, we do encourage them that if they are able to volunteer, that they do so. And, that way I think just the mentality that, if I'm getting a volunteer service, but also giving a volunteer service, I feel more comfortable, asking for a service.
Yeah.
And we do have 15% of our members are what we call sponsored members. So they do receive services at no cost, just so that, there is no financial barrier to joining. They are completely anonymous. So I'm the only one that knows, who these sponsored members are, as well as our assistant director. They are so grateful. But I think that they are also some of the ones that, almost hesitate to ask for services sometimes.
Yeah.
But they're also, incredibly generous, and the testimonials that they've given us are just truly amazing. A lot of them do give back in some way as well. So they might make, an annual gift of an amount that, works within their lifestyle. So yeah, it's that's a huge part of our mission, is making sure that everyone has access.
So can you share a little bit of sort of the fundraising mission, where, the bigger buckets, at least, you don't have to go into the nitty gritty at all, but, where sort of the revenue streams come from, are there county and state, coffers that you can access through grant writing and things like that? Are there, membership dues and fees? What does it look like? And how can people support if they wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are our annual revenue is about 30% from membership dues. So there is a membership fee, roughly $40 for an individual member or $50 for a household per month. And that makes up 30% of our revenue. But again, we do have the sponsorships or scholarships if cost is a barrier. The other 30% roughly does come in from grant funding, which I will say, nationally as well as in Tompkins County, there is less funding. So, there are so many nonprofits in our area, and a lot of them are sort of competing for the same grants. So we have seen the effects of that within the past year. And then another roughly 30% is from individual giving. So we have, very, very generous supporters and donors that have helped us. But, sustainability, I know for many nonprofits, including ours, is something that we really need to examine and maybe get creative in the future.
Yeah. I've done a little bit of work in the nonprofit space, having helped stand up a 501c3 from conception all the way through, earning, the tax designation through the initial phases of fundraising, just to kind of get the capital to feed the messaging, machine, so that we could then go out and do even more fundraising and try to actually do the good work that we were intending to do. And it is hard work. And there are a lot of giving opportunities, and there are monolithic associations, dedicated to specific chronic conditions and types of cancer and afflictions, and they can take a lot of the oxygen out of the room, I assume, or take at least a lot of the giving potential out of a room. And I can imagine that, being so regionally focused as you are, that pool, sinks even more. Do you write grants yourself? Do you have a grant writer on staff? Is that something that some of your members could possibly support you with? And could you or should you be doing even more grant writing? Is that something where you see growth potential and there's just a limitation in capacity? Or, I know that can sometimes seem like a thankless, toiling, set of things to try to do, because grant applications are long, and tedious isn't the right word, because I think it's meaningful work, but it can be long and extraneous, for sure. But
that's a good word.
But I see that you're saying that you do some of the grant application writing. Do you have any other resources to lean on for that?
Yeah, so we do actually have a development committee. We have a couple board members / volunteers that have assisted with or written grants for Love Living at Home. And then I have written some as well. I would say this year is definitely a huge learning curve for me for grant writing. It's, I've learned a lot about what it is that grantors and foundations are looking for. And a lot of the time it's less about the words and more about the stories. So I think, especially with local people, they want to hear about how your organization is making a difference in the community.
Yeah,
and that's
direct impact,
something
right?
that's, yes, and it's much easier to write about that, I think, than a lot of, I guess, statistics or research about aging. It's more about the personal stories.
Yeah, some case studies, individual stories. Yeah, that's and to be honest, so many folks, and maybe we were in a really safe space at this event recently, but everyone was so willing to share. And one thing that I heard multiple times that I found to be really, really neat was members saying, we view the dues as a gift. We're not participating in receiving any of the resources at this time, but we want to live in a community where an agency like Love Living at Home exists. So we pay that monthly fee. And then, as to your point, as kind of like an insurance policy of in the future, if I ever do need to call, then, I've built up this equity and this goodwill in this manner. And I've ensured that Love Living at Home will be there when I need them to be. So I think in that way, a membership drive is a really meaningful thing. Even if you're, years away from, having to make that request, which I thought was really, really cool. And then do you see like bequests from, either members or people who are adjacent to the agency, aware of it when they pass, that they'll will something in the form of a gift?
We don't see a lot of that yet, but I think that is an area where we could grow. The organization just celebrated its 8th anniversary. So we are, I guess, considered a fairly new non-for-profit. Yeah. But I do think that, there's a lot of people that are very passionate, like the ones that you mentioned that, don't use services, don't attend programs. They just want to support us. So I think that there is potential there. And that is something that we need to address and think about more moving forward.
Yeah. Are there any big partners that you see within Tompkins County or just regionally that you kind of lean on or find yourself in close alignment with? Are there any other organizations, for profit or nonprofit, that you tend to collaborate with?
Yeah, so we do have a pretty strong relationship with the County Office for the Aging. We have a discount relationship with the YMCA, so our members get a discount on memberships there, as well as at Lifelong in Ithaca, which has events and programs as well. We have some incredible sponsors like Timeless Hearing, and we definitely are interested in forming, more meaningful partnerships with current sponsors and, seeing how we can be more involved in the community and help, fill any other needs that are out there. So I'm definitely, now that I've almost got a year under my belt, looking to get more connected and strengthen partnerships.
Well, for anyone who might be considering a gift or sponsorship, I can speak from experience that if I haven't already said it right out, the leadership team, including yourself, and I've met a couple of the board members, the community itself, and the volunteers. I haven't met a single person yet that I didn't find welcoming, engaging, passionate. I remember even the silent auction gifts. Like, it was apparent to me that a lot of goodwill and work had gone into making these gifts that could then be auctioned off for the fundraiser taking place. From the word go, right? I found that you were very eager to involve us and to educate us and to inform us about what was going on and how we could help. And sometimes that's really what I'm looking for. We get a lot of requests for support. Many of those requests show up in the form of a letter from someone we've never met, who's never called us, just requesting money. And there might be a very well-crafted mission statement and request in that letter, but it's still cold. And often when we're and we, we pride ourselves in our community impact, and we make strategic investments because we want to live and work and serve communities that are vibrant. We tend to focus on things like the arts, We've got a big focus on domestic violence. We are 95% female on our team, so it's something where we definitely want to live in safe communities for children and women and anyone who might be, of a more vulnerable population. We tend to focus on things like cognitive support. The American Tinnitus Association is an area where we've really grown. But I've got to tell you that we make these decisions about who we will support. A lot of it has to do with, what is the traction that they're getting? Yes. And we definitely want to understand that there is going to be direct impact from the investment that we make to the mission. But at the end of the day, we want to see passionate, engaging leadership. We want to see a group of people who believe enough in the mission, that they'd be willing to jump up on the table in the middle of a crowded cafeteria and just start yelling, about it. This is the good work we're doing, and this is why it's so important, and this is why you should get involved. And that's something that has just come across very clearly, to us from Love Living at Home. And, I'm really excited to participate in our small fashion. I'm hopeful that anyone who is listening gives some consideration into a one-time gift or a recurring gift or a membership, and we'll make sure that in the show notes that there's also some links out directly to where they can make those gifts, because this type of goodwill, it comes back to us in ways that may not appear linear, right? When we create environments where people can get the help that they need, and that we reduce suffering in the world in any small amount, when we ourselves or someone who we love is in need of either resources or perhaps a little less suffering, we've paid into a system that promotes both of those things, right? It's really important for us. So thank you so much for the good work that you're doing. Thank you for the good work that you're leading through your volunteer programs. Where to now? What other than some of the creative, either fundraising potential, new resources. I mean, what do you think the next year holds for you as you start to get a more firm grasp on your role and where you can possibly help to steer through the help of your board and the guidance of your board, Love Living at Home?
I think the biggest goal for us, I guess, in almost 2025, so for the next year, we are really looking to grow. I think we have had some members that have sort of aged out of Love Living at Home and have moved into retirement communities. We have a lot of people that have moved to other states to get away from these winters. So we have room to grow and spread our mission. We also, I would say, over the past couple of years, we changed our age from 62 to 50 for membership. So we are really looking, especially in that 50 to 62-year-old age group. We want to find people that, have maybe just retired and are looking for something to do or some way to get involved. So I think, we need to get that message out there and try to market to or target that demographic as well, so that we can really, see the future of Love Living at Home and have those members have people, start as volunteers, become members, and then help us recruit the next generation.
Yeah. And continue this great work into the future. I think it's fantastic. So aside from the show notes, like I said, we're going to post something. Where could our listeners go to find out more about Love Living at Home?
They can visit lovelivingathome.org. They can give us a call at 607-319-0162. Shoot an email to office@lovelivingathome.org, or follow us on Facebook.
There you go. And they'll find photos from your events, maybe event calendars as well. And I know that you're out there in the communities. You're doing great work. And, I do, really suggest that just about anyone who's within a drive from Tompkins County get connected somehow and come out and see the great work you're doing. Is there an enduring message from either you yourself or Love Living at Home?
I would say, we do have a free 3-month trial. So the message along with that is just that we want to be accessible to all, and we want to give people the opportunity to give us a try.
Well, Thena, thank you so much for your hard work, your good work. Thank you so much for the time today. Thank you for joining us here on the podcast. None of us can change the fact that we will age, but we can, through mindful choices, applied discipline, and vision and commitment to our future selves, have some say in just how we will age. Again, this is the Timeless Podcast presented by Timeless Hearing, a group of healthcare professionals on a mission to convince you that the best moments of your life lie ahead of you, not behind, that your spark, though wavering, can be reignited, your energy restored, and the fullness of both your life and your love can be recaptured or redefined. Visit us at timelesshearing.com or any one of our area practice locations and come find out how. Thank you so much for your time. If we've enlightened you, sparked your curiosity, or prompted your feedback on how or where we've gotten something wrong, please comment, share, and follow. Thena, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cliff.